A likely trade partner would be Miami at 14, who would be trading up to get Devontae Parker or a wide receiver, or a different wide receiver, or San Francisco, who could possibly trading up to get Trey Waynes, as they have nobody at cornerback and could desperately use a shutdown corner. And it's a copycat league. You look at their division. The Cardinals have a first-round shutdown corner in Patrick Peterson. The Seahawks have arguably the best cornerback in the league in Richard Sherman. So I really feel that the 49ers are eyeing a cornerback, and that would make them another likely trade partner for the Vikings. So what I'm predicting, I really do feel that the Vikings will successfully pull off a trade, either to move down to 14 with Miami or to 15 with San Francisco, and they will draft safety Landon Collins. However, if they are unable to move down from 11, I feel that they will take Trey Waynes. And if anybody, and so for my mock draft, I have Trey Waynes going number 11. I just don't know if it's going to be to Minnesota or not. I feel like it'll probably be the 49ers at 15 trading up with the Vikings and taking Trey Waynes. And so then that would put the Vikings, well, that'd put them on the clock at 15, and I'll tell you what happens then, because that does change stuff a little bit. So, but anyway, the Vikings have traded the 11th pick. Well, no, let's just leave them at the 11th, because I don't know. I don't have it finalized. So at 11, maybe the Vikings, or maybe who they trade with. At 11, first corner off the board, Trey Waynes. Moving on to number 12. Now, this trade I did have locked in. You can bank this one. This will be the New York Giants, who made a trade with the Cleveland Browns at number 12. The New York Giants make the first slightly questionable reach of the draft and draft defensive tackle Malcolm Brown, because that is their biggest need. All the good defensive tackles are going to go in this first round, and he is the only other one that really fits their 4-3 scheme. All the other ones are nose tackles primarily. So I have, again, defensive tackle Malcolm Brown going number 12 to the New York Giants via trade. That brings us on to the New Orleans Saints at number 13. They're going defense, no doubt about it. Two candidates on the board left that they're going to look at. It's either going to be Bud Dupree, physical specimen beast. The guy's like 6'5", 270, and runs like a 4.4. Just like, he's insane, but he's really raw. So they will either be looking Bud Dupree, their outside linebacker, defensive end, or they will be looking Shane Ray. Many people have Shane Ray as the best edge rusher, best pure pass rusher in the draft. I personally don't. I think he is far too undersized and not strong enough up top to be an elite pass rusher in the NFL. He is 6'3", 245 pounds. Tell me who the last guy was that was in the top 10 in sacks for an NFL season that was under 6'4" and under 240 pounds. Tell me who that guy was, and maybe I'll change my stance on Shane Ray. But anyway, I think the New Orleans Saints will in fact take Shane Ray over Bud Dupree if he's available. If Shane Ray's gone, Bud Dupree's pretty much a lock at 13 to New Orleans. But if Shane Ray's available, which I have him at, I have Shane Ray, Mizzou edge rusher, going to the New Orleans Saints at number 13. So moving on to 14, we have the Miami Dolphins, and they'll be racing this up there, and they'll be happy that they didn't have to trade up for it either. The Miami Dolphins will select wide receiver Devontae Parker, because while they signed Greg Jennings and they drafted Jarvis Landry, who was a great surprise star last year, that's just a number 2 and a number 3 guy. Landry is a slot receiver, and Jennings is a number 2 outside wide receiver. Is not the go-to number 1 guy. So they are very much still in the market for a go-to number 1 wide receiver for Ryan Tannehill. And they spent tons of money on defense, as you know, with Ndamukong Suh. So you can almost lock this one in, like I said, unless someone trades and steals him or they trade up to get him. Number 14, Miami Dolphins, wide receiver, Devontae Parker. So moving on to number 15, San Francisco 49ers. I have this marked as my trade watch with the Vikings, like I said, or Miami, the pick before, like I said. However, if the 49ers stay here at this pick, I am guaranteeing, well, not guaranteeing, but I'm almost guaranteeing that they will go with a cornerback, not a defensive not a nose tackle or a defensive lineman or anything like that, which I've seen many mocks having them take. I think they almost certainly go corner, cover corner. The only other option I would see would maybe be an offensive lineman, since they lost their best offensive lineman in Mikey Upati, left guard. They could maybe go La'el Collins, who is an offensive tackle slash guard, much like Sheriff. And that is the other target that the Vikings might take, too, if they trade down. If the Vikings trade down, we will be abandoning Devontae Parker and Brandon Sheriff and Trey Waynes, and we will be committing to either Landon Collins, strong safety, who I think is the best pick we could possibly make, and that's what I'm cheering for, or La'el Collins, offensive lineman, who has the versatility that Sheriff does, just not quite as much size and strength. So again, if the Vikings are able to pull off this trade, I have Landon Collins, safety, going 15 to the Vikings. However, with San Francisco staying put at 15, I have them drafting Jalen Collins, my favorite corner in this draft, or one of my 3 favorite corners in this draft, I should say, and I believe he is from LSU. The reason he's my favorite is he's got a good 2 inches in height on all the other defensive backs in the draft that are towards the top. He's like, I want to say he's like 6'2 or 6'3, something like that. He's got wide receiver type height, and he's got as much speed as everybody else too. So to me, that separates him and makes him unique. Where you've got Trey Waynes going off the board, the who's next for the defensive backs is anybody's guess. It could be Jalen Collins, which I have. It could be Kevin Johnson, could be Byron Jones, could be Marcus Peters, who is almost without question the most talented corner in the draft. Just he comes with more baggage. So those are the question marks there. But again, I have cornerback Jalen Collins going to the 49ers at 15. That brings us to the 16th pick in the draft, which is the Houston Texans. Assuming that the Vikings do not make a trade down and steal him, the Houston Texans will race up to the podium and draft strong safety Landon Collins. They have almost no needs on the offensive side of the ball other than quarterback. However, they've got 2 young guys there that those are their horses, and they're going to see who can win it. You could maybe argue that they would look for a wide receiver to replace Andre Johnson. However, they've got their go-to number 1 in DeAndre Hopkins, and they signed a wonderful veteran go-to number 2 or 3 guy in Cecil Shorts III. So it, to me, does not make sense for them whatsoever to go with that. They're going to stick with the defensive side of the ball. Their secondary is weak. Their linebackers are phenomenal. And their defensive front is great. So I think they almost 100% certain they go secondary, and they're going Landon Collins, strong safety. So moving on to 17, we've got the San Diego Chargers. This one is, again, almost as close to a lock as you can get. They will be drafting Todd Gurley, running back. They could also go Melvin Gordon, running back, but I feel that they like Gurley better, as do most people. And I think that's where they go. So lock it in. San Diego Chargers at 17, pick Todd Gurley, running back. That would bring us to the 18th pick, which is currently held by the Kansas City Chiefs. Very popular belief that they will be going wide receiver. However, I don't believe that. Why would you draft a wide receiver with your first pick when you just spent $11 million a year to get a wide receiver named Jeremy Maclin? You don't draft role players and backups with your first-round draft pick unless you're the New England Patriots or something like that, and it's a luxury pick anyway, basically. That's the only time you do that. So, having that be said, Kansas City will opt to get a receiver in the second or third rounds of the draft, where they will still have tons of talent, as I mentioned earlier, and they go bolster their secondary, continue the now ongoing run of cover corners, and they draft corner Kevin Johnson. Very possible they go Jalen Collins or Byron Jones or Like I said, all these corners are kind of interchangeable. Marcus Peters, once you get past Trey Waynes being the top guy, it simply comes down to who the teams prefer more. This is just my best guess. So again, Kevin Johnson, corner, going at 18 to the Kansas City Chiefs. That moves us to 19. The Cleveland Browns making their second pick. I know I've said this a lot, but they're sprinting their butts off to the podium to get this one, and they draft defensive tackle / nose tackle for a 3-4, Eric Armstead from Oregon. This guy is 6'7" and just a hair under 300 pounds. Most mocks I have seen have him going to the 49ers at 15. I've even seen him in the top 10 because he is such an ideal fit size-wise, schematically, for 3-4 defenses that need to bolster their defensive line. However, like I said, I have him falling down here just to within the top 20. Cleveland Browns select Eric Armstead, defensive tackle, nose tackle, at 19. And the Cleveland Browns, if what I have predicted is correct, the Cleveland Browns walk out of the first round with Amari Cooper at wide receiver and Eric Armstead at nose tackle, defensive tackle. And that would be a huge victory on day one of the draft for the Browns if they can pull that off. So, anyway, moving on to 20 now, the Philadelphia Chips. The Philadelphia Chips is what I'm calling them now. They shouldn't even be the Eagles anymore. It is the Chip Kellys. Got a buddy working on some cool helmet designs for the Philadelphia Chips. I'll be sharing those with you maybe via Facebook and Twitter the more I get them. Thanks, by the way, buddy. But I feel that the Philadelphia Eagles, again, another one of those teams that it's very sexy and popular to have them picking wide receiver because there's a ton of great ones and it's a glaring need for the team. However, their more important needs are on defense, being able to stop the frickin' Cowboys' offensive line and Dez Bryant from having their ways with them is really what they need to worry about competing with first and foremost. So that is why and Chip Kelly's ego, I feel, won't draft offensive players that aren't quarterback or offensive linemen in the first round of any draft ever. Arguably, like it's a stretch to get his ego to swallow that. So I think he thinks he can get this talent later, and I actually agree with him from that standpoint. So I have Philadelphia taking the best defensive player on the board, which is, by my estimation, Bud Dupree, outside linebacker, defensive end, edge rusher. Ideal for a 3-4 system, freakish athlete. Chip Kelly should be raving this pick and making himself sound out to be a genius when really it was just a fall from, not because nobody wants him, just sometimes that's where the chips fall. Terrible pun not intended, I promise. But so again, I have the Philadelphia Eagles at 20, staying pat, not making any crazy trades, and getting Bud Dupree, outside linebacker, defensive end. Moving on to 21, the Cincinnati Bengals. They are semi-heartbroken that Landon Collins, safety, is not available. They could possibly be willing to trade up to get him. I think he's by far their number one target, as they have very, very few needs in Cincinnati. However, I have them taking Brashad Perryman, fourth wide receiver off the board. That's right. It took 21 picks for the fourth wide receiver in my mock draft to go, when a lot of people are picking 8 wide receivers or more to be taken in this draft. I had my fourth, and by the way, spoiler alert, final wide receiver taken in the draft at number 21 to the Cincinnati Bengals. Brashad Perryman is a burner. He can get down the field and be a deep threat. Use A.J. Green as your number 1. Have your deep threat as your number 2 on the outside. They have not done a good job of getting Andy Dalton enough weapons, better weapons, outside of A.J. Green. He needs a number 2 to take coverage off of him in the worst way. Them adding depth to their defense is not going to make them any better. Adding Landon Collins at safety would make their defense better because they stink at safety, but everywhere else they're pretty good. They got good corners, they got good linebackers, they got good D tackles, they got good D ends. So if you're asking me how the Bengals are most likely to make their team better in the first round, the only way they can do that without Landon Collins being available, in my opinion, is by getting a wide receiver. And the best available one, at least as far as I know, is Brashad Perriman. And so that's where they go. Cincinnati Bengals